Bad Batch Season 3 Episode 4 ended on a huge cliffhanger, but there is also a huge musical cue that hints at what's going to happen next. And we continue to get evidence that Omega is the first Force-sensitive clone. Welcome back to ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the Bad Batch Season 3 Episode 4. So, this episode kind of surprised me. I thought that Omega and Crosshair would be off on their own for at least a couple more episodes, as the show ramped up the tension to see when they would reunite with the rest of the squad. Like, these are easily my two favorite characters on the show, probably because they have the two most dynamic character arcs. Omega starts off as a naive, sheltered kid who learns the ways of war, while Crosshair begins the series as a hardened warrior who has to learn that there's more to life than just following orders. The two of them have always had a really subtle bond, with Omega being able to sense Crosshair's true feelings all the way back in the first episode.
You're angry.
Now, you could say this is because she's an observant little clone.
How perceptive.
But the evidence just keeps piling up that she has always been Force sensitive, as we'll see later in the video. The two of them make a great storytelling pair. He's all gruff and brooding, and she's all fun and full of mirth.
Dream team.
Like BJ and the bear.
Yes, like BJ and the bear. Well done. High five. And just a reminder, everybody, we have awesome Star Wars parody merch for sale at our merch store, ScreenCrushMerch.com, where we design all the merch ourselves. We have this classic original trilogy t-shirt, the Say No to Death sticks, the Hello There, and this brand new shirt, the They Fly Now, in honor of one of my favorite lines from Rise of Skywalker.
They fly now! They fly now! They fly now!
Shopping our merch store is the best way to directly support our channel, and we have a lot of fun designing these shirts for you guys. So you can find the link for that down below. So the episode is called A Different Approach, and it refers to Omega and Crosshair each having to accomplish a mission in a different way than they're used to. Omega wants to use friendliness and subterfuge, whereas Crosshair wants to shoot his way out. Now this is really what the Bad Batch show is about. As individualists, their skills are incomplete, but as a whole, they complement one another. We began right where we left off, with the ship's engines failing in hyperspace. Now this is actually really dangerous. If a ship's engine hyperdrive fails in hyperspace, then they would drop out of hyperspace anywhere, like Han spelled out here.
Without precise calculations, we'd fly right through a star or bounce too close to a supernova and that'd end your trip real quick, wouldn't it?
Now notice the attention to detail here, that Omega's console here is showing the exact spots on the ship that we see damaged in the exterior shot, while Crosshair's diagram shows these lines featuring stress points of the hull, and this arabesh that reads, "Caution, caution," at the top, and this meter that shows power to show that they're losing coaxium fuel and they're about to drop out of hyperspace. So, right after the crash, we really see the difference between these two. Omega immediately thinks of others.
We need to get the nav reader online to extract the coordinates to Tantus for when we go back.
While Crosshair immediately thinks of himself. He wants to go it alone and lay low. And this is actually how these two were designed to think. Omega, as a Force-sensitive clone, would naturally feel more affinity to all living beings, while Crosshair, designed to be a sniper and attack from a distance, would naturally feel separate from other people.
Hey, when you make these videos, do you like translate the Star Wars letters cause you know them?
Eventually, yeah. I mean, I can read Arabesh, but I'm pretty rusty at the moment, so I do use a cipher.
Oh, okay. Well, do you also speak Huttese? McLarty.
No, I don't actually speak Huttese because it's not a real language, but if any of you want to learn an actual language, you can do it with Babble. They're the sponsor of this video. Babble makes learning a new language so easy. Like, look, I took Spanish in high school and I thought learning a new language was just learning vocabulary words, so I really struggled. But Babble teaches you the language slowly from the ground up. The lessons use situations and dialogue that you would actually use in the real world, like this.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. The lessons are all like that. They're slow and easy to digest. You can do yours for about 10 minutes every morning. Babble helps you to start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, and you use these short 10-minute lessons that are made by actual language teachers and not like an AI or an algorithm. In fact, right now, you can get 60% off a Babble subscription by clicking the link below or scanning this QR code. Like, I was always too intimidated to start a new language, but Babble makes it so easy. And I'm telling you, Babble really works. University studies have shown that 15 hours of Babble equals a semester of college Spanish, and they offer lessons in 14 different languages. Like 2 years ago, I went to Italy, and thanks to Babble, I was able to order food in restaurants and I could find my way around Rome.
Does anyone here speak English?
Babble has a few different subscriptions you could choose from, so if you are interested in learning a new language, this is a great opportunity to try it out. Plus, they offer a 20-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it and see if it's right for you. Click our link in the description or scan this QR code to get started today. Now, back to the Bad Batch. Now, back on Mount Tantus, we see the clone commandos with their glowing visors guarding the cell of Nala Se. Now, Nala Se was obviously hiding Omega from the Empire, but the question I have is why?
Why?
Everything we've seen of the Kaminoans makes us think that they are purely interested in profit and their own culture. If this is the case, then maybe she wanted to keep Omega from the Empire because she was simply a valuable piece of IP that they did not pay for. Or maybe she sees Omega as the only hope to fight the Empire. If she could escape, then Nala Se could potentially clone Omega and create a new Jedi Order of clones.
Or maybe she just loves her and thinks of her as her little daughter.
Yeah, and actually, I think you're right. And then we get a standard Star Wars wipe to this new Outer Rim backworld planet. Now, I believe that in the episode, the Imperial captain calls this planet Lao, which could be a nod to Lao Che, the villain in the opening act of Temple of Doom. We already got a Lao Che Easter egg back in Season 2, Episode 13, which is Club Lao Che, where a fight erupted in a club, just like in the opening of Temple of Doom. Now, there are lots of alien species on this planet, but I'm not going to identify them every single time they pop up, just like the first time we see them on screen. For instance, right here, we see an astromech droid and an Aqualish. Now, right behind this Aqualish, I think that is an Abonito, like Elo Asti in The Last Jedi. The design of the planet is very interesting. Notice how the city is surrounded by jagged rocks sticking out of the ground. This is showing us that the terrain is inhospitable, which traps our heroes in this city. But also, these mountains look like scales or the back of a dragon that is resting beneath the ground. It's all very subtle to hint to us that they are trapped and surrounded in a very dangerous place. It's also a very dirty, grimy place that has the quality of Outer Rim worlds like Tatooine or Navarro. The tarps above the street also call to mind the cities of Batuu from the Galaxy's Edge theme park. But this city also felt like a combination between like an old Kentucky mine town with some aesthetics of a Middle Eastern city street. It's a very cool design. Now we see that stormtroopers are occupying the city and their armor is dirty. They're wearing these cloaks. They're all very subtle indications that this world is far from the power centers of the galaxy. It's also interesting to see this because this kind of Imperial occupation is what we're used to seeing in the Imperial era. It's a sign that the Bad Batch have completed the transition from the Republic clone army of liberators to the Imperial forces of occupiers that, we grew up watching. Also, Crosshair and Omega steal these disguises that also show this transition into the clothes of the original trilogy. The padding on their suits looks like the Rebel uniforms worn on Hoth, and the helmet Omega wears also looks like part of the Rebel soldier uniform, with its flat front and ear flaps. Now, I love how we're seeing very subtle design changes that are shifting us from the Clone Wars era into the Imperial era. The spaceport is also modeled like the one we saw in Solo, but this is an Outer Rim world, so it doesn't have the strictest security of a major population center like Corellia. Here we see an alien that pops up all throughout the episode. Now, at first, I thought this could be a Nemoidian like the Trade Federation. Please don't play those accents. But I actually don't think this is a Nemoidian. It's probably a generic alien. They keep their face covered so they don't have to animate them or design them, but it could also be an Onamid. But there are so many of these guys walking around that I actually think they're probably native to this world, and we saw a species like this appear very briefly in Solo in the background. I think this species is based on your mom. When Omega says,
We could try a way that doesn't involve blaster fire.
It of course reminded me of this.
You can't win, but there are alternatives to fighting.
Same dynamic too. Omega was a caring person attached to others, just like Obi-Wan, while Han and Crosshair are both go-it-alone loners. Although I will say that Crosshair does spend most of this episode complaining.
There's no time for that. You're the one who wanted to bring the Hound. Well, that went well. My skills are being wasted.
Oh, bitch, bitch, bitch!
She asked for chain codes, and remember, these are like Imperial Social Security numbers that we saw the Empire implementing way back in Episode 2 of the series, when the Bad Batch smuggled Cut and his family off-world. Just like in the movie Solo, the official accepts a bribe, and as the heroes leave and Arcona approaches. Now this is the very first alien that we saw in the New Hope Cantina scene, and then we get a mini version of that scene with Omega leading Crosshair into a gambling den. I mean, remember, Omega practically grew up in Sid's parlor, so she feels very at home here. In the wide shot, we can see a Rodian, a Bith, and a Twi'lek at the end of the bar, and they all appear throughout the scenes in this bar. And of course, there's the Trandoshan at the table who Omega beats first. The droid working the bar looks like a similar model to Glitch, the droid that bartended in Aunt Z's tavern in Star Wars Resistance. Notice the bottles behind the bar look like the exact same bottle layout in Sid's bar. Probably another reason Omega feels at home here. So remember, Omega was like really good at Dejaric or Hollow Chess, and she actually cleared the Bad Batch's debt by playing for Sid.
Omega made enough money to pay off the debt you boys owe me.
Again, the reason Omega's good at games could be because she has Force sensitivity and she can see things before they happen. And this is why little Anakin Skywalker was the only human who could pod race.
I'm the only human who can do it. You must have Jedi reflexes if you race bots.
And then the Imperial Captain Man enters, and geez, what a great, sleazy Imperial officer this guy is. In just a few scenes, they paint a perfect picture of a villain, an officer who is probably of high birth, judging by his accent, and you get the feeling that he's sloppy and he's screwed up to get stationed in this backwater world. But he's taking advantage of having his own little fiefdom by wringing extra credits out of the locals. He's the kind of villain where we feel like we're coming into the middle of his story. It's a shame this happens to him at the end. The kid on the street is selling Melu runs, a type of melon that was a MacGuffin in an early episode of Star Wars Rebels. And here's a deep cut for you. You hear this bird sound effect? We hear that same sound effect used on Endor in Return of the Jedi. After Omega beats and embarrasses the captain, they take Omega's Lurka, Batcher. Now, last week, I kept calling him Bitcha, because that's what the name sounds like in Omega's hilarious Kiwi accent.
Betcha?
My bad. This whole thing with the Lurka being taken is an opportunity to once again show the difference between Crosshair and Omega. Crosshair's journey throughout the show has been to learn the value of empathy and individualism. He begins the series placing all his trust in authority, and gradually learns to place his trust in others, while Omega has naturally sought to find connections with others. She wanted to befriend the Bad Batch in the first episode, she wants to free the prisoners on Mount Tantus, and here she wants to free the animals. In fact, they are actually only successful when they combine their different paths. When they resort to violence and free the animals, it allows them to escape.
Yeah, so why are all the animals in cages? Did they commit a crime?
Well, it looks like Captain Man is running some kind of smuggling operation out of the planet, where the Imperials are profiting on the sale of these animals. Or it could be that these animals are actually the planet's biggest export. The Empire wants to use them for zoos and labor on other worlds. And by the way, the layout of this port with the Imperial towers, the fence, and security measures is very much like the Imperial port we saw in Cut's World in episode 2 of season 1. But now the perimeter's been shored up, and the Imperial presence has a much more lived-in feel. There are also lots of small Imperial design flourishes, like here, we can see an Imperial communications console, similar to the ones in the Emperor's Throne Room in Return of the Jedi. Also, the fence looks like the hallway walls in the Death Star of A New Hope. And I love design details like this because you can imagine some Imperial factory churning out plate after plate after plate, and the Empire then implementing these uniform designs across every planet in the galaxy. The Arabesh on the animal crates reads the same thing. It all reads caution, volatile contents. Now, this even shows how cold the Empire is. They don't see these animals as life forms, but as contents, something to be used and exploited for their financial gain. And the console here reads, unlocking all cages.
Yeah, it's weird that they just had that command in a computer ready to go, right?
Yeah, like when would they ever need to open all the cages at once? Now, we don't really get a good look at most of these animals because they move so fast and, motion blur is a thing, but these blue flying reptiles do look like the bog wings that we saw in the Phantom Menace on Naboo. These two-legged guys look like the Nuna, who we also saw on Naboo. And these tall, lanky ones I think are a new animal to Star Wars, but the way they run seems inspired by the Gallimimus herd in Jurassic Park. And the captain is eaten by a Rathtar like we first saw in The Force Awakens. So, Crosshair and Omega steal a ship, and man did I comb through the encyclopedia of Star Wars ships to find what this was, and the best that I can tell is this might be a GH Troc 5980 light freighter. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Afterwards, Hemlock, who is voiced by an incredible Jimmy Simpson, visits the crashed shuttle. Now it's fitting that this whole arc begins and ends with the crashed shuttle. And then, finally, we get the reunion that we've been waiting for. They meet Hunter and Wrecker on a desolate moon with the somehow breathable atmosphere. And here, the work of composer Kevin Kiner and his sons Sean and David really shines.
I knew you'd show up.
So this reunion's all happy-clappy until Crosshair emerges from the ship. Now remember, the last time Crosshair saw Hunter, he just captured him. But since then, Crosshair has essentially turned on the Empire, fragging his superior officer.
What you say?
And at the end of last season, Crosshair sent the Bad Batch a warning that the Empire was coming after Omega.
We are being targeted. I believe he is warning us.
But none of this means that Crosshair is going to be willing to rejoin his brothers, or that they're going to forgive him. They still have very different viewpoints on what they should be fighting for. Hunter and Wrecker have learned the value of family, while Crosshair still maybe wants to be alone.
Don't risk anything for me. I belong in here.
But Omega is their bridge. She is the one person who can unite the team. So this episode is directed by Saul Ruiz, who has directed some of the best Bad Batch episodes, including The Solitary Clone and Camino Lost. Ruiz really knows how to handle Crosshair episodes, and I thought that was appropriate that the episode ends with a very subtle music cue that hints at where Crosshair is going from here. And by the way, I gotta shout out a great video examining Crosshair's music themes by the channel Hobrix. We are linking the video below. I highly suggest you check it out. It's very good. So Hobrix points out at the beginning of his video that throughout the show, Crosshair is defined by two themes. There's this theme,
It's time to stop running. Join the Empire.
And the other leitmotif is what he calls the inhibitor chip theme. Now notice this second theme is very mechanical, very binary, on or off, good soldiers follow orders. But the first theme is more tragic and sad. It's more related to how Crosshair feels in his heart. So throughout the show, Crosshair's story is essentially split between these two themes. Like the famous scene where Crosshair kills the lieutenant. We begin that scene with a bit of the inhibitor chip leitmotif.
You could have saved him.
Perhaps you didn't hear me.
But then, just before he kills the officer, Crosshair's theme asserts itself to show how his individuality is starting to surface. Now, when Omega embraces Hunter, we hear Omega's theme. It's very sweet, heartfelt, and simple, but when Crosshair exits the ship, we hear Crosshair's theme. But notice, this theme is played in a more minor key, giving it a more haunting tone. So that Winter Soldier inhibitor chip theme is gone, and we are left with Crosshair's theme, but the music is haunted, almost tainted, just like Crosshair is tainted by his past actions, and he'll now be seeking forgiveness from his brothers. So I think this is an indication that Crosshair is going to stay with the team, partially out of loyalty to Omega, and following the death of Tech, he'll want to mourn with his own people and make amends for trying to capture them for the Empire. He did try to get the Bad Batch to join his squad though back in episode 15.
Join the Empire, and you will have purpose again.
So I think that they will reunite reluctantly next episode. But the real question is, what's next? Are they going to fly off to Space Grease and retire, take down Mount Tantus, free Nala Se and the other clones, join Rex in his war against the Empire? I mean, next time we see Rex is in Star Wars Rebels, where he's retired, so we know his war doesn't exactly turn out great. Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.